Testing. Hello, everybody. It's Chalkboard History.
It is.
Volume 3.
We're just going to go
Episode 6.
All right.
I don't know what episode it is. Do we even have any idea?
I don't even know. Probably. We got to be in the 20s by now. We started doing this almost 2 years ago. So it's got to be in the 20s. If not more. That's what we're talking about today.
The 160th episode of Chalkboard History.
Not quite. Not by
It's the 160th. It's 160th episode of Gunsmoke.
Great show. Not what we're talking about.
160th Super Bowl. Imagine the
We have
Super
a
Bowl
long way to go.
like 100 years from now.
I feel like they're not going to have it 100 years from now. I don't know. Maybe the NFL won't be in vogue anymore.
Here you go.
160th anniversary
of
the Battles of Spring Hill and Franklin.
And his re-election.
Yeah.
And his
capture of Atlanta.
burning of Georgia.
And his abandoning of Georgia.
Yes. And John McGavick telling everybody, I told you this was a stupid idea.
And him saving the day and being a world-class hero and that house getting shot up. And
Oh, yeah, that house getting shot up. It was a bad day.
him carrying out a pretty incredible escape.
So what are we doing
we
for the
can do a lot of
160th?
stuff
You know
there.
how old I am? I was here for the 140th, right about this area. I was at the 140th reenactment of the Battle of Franklin. They had a little...
That makes you old.
You were how old?
What year was that? 19...
Do some math, Professor.
No, I'm a historian, not a mathematician. You get to do the
20
numbers.
from 24.
20 from 24. So what? Is that 94? I was not a twinkle in my father's eye yet.
2004.
2004? Oh, I don't know.
Bella's
like
in the
9.
background. She's like, Joseph.
It's
It's
like 9. I don't know. Yeah, I think 9. 9 or 10.
9.
Yeah, 9 or 10.
You're watching Spider-Man or something.
Superman. Never Spider-Man. We're not a Marvel family, and I was never a Marvel person. Yeah, I'm DC all the way. Yeah.
Batman, that's it.
Yeah.
Batman's
Batman and
it.
Superman. Yeah.
No, Superman.
Oh, come on.
Superman's
There's a new Superman movie coming
Superman's
out next year.
pants are too tight. It just doesn't work for me. It never has.
Favorite Batman?
Batman. I don't know that I have a favorite. You mean favorite who played him or
Yeah.
movie?
Yeah. Favorite who played him?
Oh, well, The Dark Knight. I mean,
So Christian Bale.
The Dark Knight is one of the top 20 movies ever made. I mean, that movie is ridiculously good.
I would say that was a groundbreaking series of films.
Michael Caine is fantastic. Heath
Yep.
Ledger is ridiculous.
Yep.
And, I mean, Christian Bale is just good.
He's great. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great movie. There's a couple of stinker Batmans, but...
George Clooney. Not that great. Val Kilmer. Also not that great.
Yeah.
Val Kilmer should have stuck to being Doc Holliday.
I never cared for Jack Nicholson as the Joker, but that's just me.
Yeah. Nah. Heath Ledger's the Joker. In my mind, when I imagine the Joker, it's Heath Ledger. But that's not what you paid to talk about. No.
They're not
That's not
paying
what-
anything. They're watching this for free.
YouTube gives us some money.
Yeah,
They are
YouTube
watching it
pays
for
us,
free.
but they're watching it for
watching
free.
it for free.
Who would pay for this?
A really, really sad person.
Yeah.
So no, we are talking about the 160th anniversary.
I was here for the 150th, too.
Of course you were. I was also here for the 150th. I wasn't working here,
The
but I was here.
150th was crazy.
160th, not so crazy.
So what are we
What's the
doing?
dude?
What are we doing? What are we doing?
Well,
What are you doing? Because you know what? The good news is, everybody, I'm not doing anything. Because for the first time, I'm actually really going to enjoy a significant anniversary and take it all in without having to work too hard.
All right. So what are we doing? Well, we're starting a whole month of programming from November all the way through into the first week of December.
Okay, so
which
it's
will be pretty
today's
great.
date is May 16th.
Yep.
And we're already in the middle of this, right?
Yes.
All right.
And early November, our friends from the American Battlefield Trust are going to be here. We're going to shoot some stuff with them, do some battlefield course
We're going to
things.
throw mini balls against buildings.
Oh, that's really loud on the sound pickup. Yeah.
Well, gunshot fire is loud.
Yeah. So we're going to do that. And then we've got some speakers planned November the 7th, 14th, and the 21st. Kicking things off with Dr. Brian Jordan, who's going to talk about U.S. Army veterans, their post-war struggles. He's going to actually talk about some of the guys who were here at Franklin, which is really cool.
Like who?
I sent him the profile for Edward Moff because I think that one's a really good one.
That poor guy. Oh.
Yeah. So he's going to talk about that. And then the week after that, we've got Dr. James Atkinson going to talk about medical care. I think I called it Surgeries and Gangrene is the title for his talk, but it's going to be about Civil War medicine and surgeries performed during the war. And then the last
You're talking very fast.
I know. We have a lot of things to talk about.
You're very excited.
I am.
I can tell.
I am. We worked really hard on getting this together. And then
what was happening right now 160 years ago?
Oh, God, why? Well, Sherman's on the move in a very big way.
Bad boy.
Grant and Lee are still duking it out.
Let's interrupt the flow of what we're doing and talk about why.
Yeah.
Because what's important about 1864?
Well, I actually got some flack for this the other day on a tour, but we have those banners, right, that says 1864, the year the war was won.
There's a surprise that a guest would have an opinion.
And this guy goes, well, the war was actually won in 1865. I'm like, yeah, I know, but 4 months in doesn't count, right? Right, we're willing to make that concession.
Yeah.
It's not quite there.
That's somebody, I think, just being too smart by two. Like, it's obvious that
the decisive actions were fought in 1864.
It's very clear that World War II was won in 1945, but Normandy happened in 1944.
Right.
All right. So,
right.
There's that.
These are also the same people that would say, like, Gettysburg's the most important battle of the war and was the turning point of the war.
Not.
And it's like,
I thought it was. Everybody tells me it is.
I don't think it is.
Well, it is pretty important, but 64
but why we talk about any of this stuff is because 1864 is the seminal year of the war. If you're looking for where the war was won
and lost,
it's that year. You can't look anywhere else. It's got to be 64.
It truly is the first time that Lincoln got his act together with the right cast of characters.
Exactly.
And started just pushing on all fronts. So Grant is moving, Sherman is moving, Nathaniel Banks is moving, and the U.S.
Sheridan
Navy.
is moving.
And the U.S. Navy. Well, Sheridan is a little later.
A little later, but he's moving.
Right. But it's a multi-pronged attack to finally box in and crush.
And everything on the other side for the Confederates is seemingly falling apart. The only thing that's holding the Army of Northern Virginia together at this point is Robert E. Lee.
Well, it's an interesting way to look at the Confederate. I think it's an interesting way to look at the Confederate war effort in 64 because what the Confederates had done, let's be super nerdy for a second. And if you think about 62 and 63 in particular, Albert Sidney Johnston and Robert E. Lee and Braxton Bragg, just those three commanders, different armies, different times, are all very offensive minded.
Yep.
Okay, they know that they have to try and win the war. This isn't a case of trying not to lose. You really want to win, right?
Yeah.
But 64 is a different game.
They've got to switch footing.
And the Confederates are really back on their heels.
Yep.
Now, it's true that Lee, typical of Lee, is all over Grant offensively in the wilderness. But Grant just retakes the initiative and just starts coming at Lee. Which I mention all this because it gets to this bigger point about Hood and his offensive mindset later in the year. But 64 is also important because it's a year and a half after emancipation. So you start to see USCT soldiers used in a very significant way. You have episodes like Fort Pillow, which we've already passed the 160th of that, which is this incredibly violent episode, which is symptomatic of the divisions. You have Forrest and his Confederates finding Tennesseans in blue uniforms and black men in blue uniforms. That doesn't go well. And then you have the election. And, I guess I knew this, but when Alan Gelzo pointed out the obvious, it was years ago, and Gelzo was like, the 64 election is one of the most consequential presidential elections in history. And I was like, well, really? Why? And it, we weren't talking. I was, of course, watching him. And he answered his own question, and he said, my God, could you have imagined a country with George McClellan as president?
Yeah.
And I've never forgotten that because it actually makes me a little bit nauseous that this guy,
Peace at any terms.
it's one thing to be opposed to Lincoln if you're a Southerner. McClellan is really a piece of work because he was betraying everything that he had allegedly been fighting for, which was to defend the United States. And it's no wonder the soldiers voted about 80+% for Lincoln because they just turned on. They were just sickened by it. In fact, I think if you looked in the Western armies, I bet it was north of 90%. You know, the only McClellan supporters may have been some of the guys who had once fought for him. But 64 is that kind of consequence, and we want to try and get guests to understand that. So that's the CEO's perspective, but back to you, and what's the programming going to... Like, what's somebody going to see in August of this year versus what they'll see in October and November?
So in August, you'll see we've got a new display that's going to be in hopefully by the end of this month, if not the beginning of June, that's going to really walk us through what normal people here in this area in Middle Tennessee were experiencing throughout the year of 1864. So yeah, we're going to talk about the election. We're going to talk about the Atlantic campaign. And then, of course, we're going to talk about the military campaigns into this area. But not so much from, you know, the left, right, and left perspective and Hood and Schofield, but more along the lines of women like Fanny Courtney and soldiers like Erastus Winters. And, you know, your favorite, Isaac Sherwood, shows up every now and again in that display.
He and Updike should have had a club. They really should have.
The Colonel General Club?
It should have been the I'm Super Cool Club.
Have you seen that? That was another Facebook comment. We put up something about Emerson Updike the other day, and one of the responses was Colonel General Ohio Superman, and that's become the only way I can refer to Emerson Updike.
That's you and your little clique of friends.
I know, but I can't get away from it now.
Well, you started it, so it's your fault.
Yep. So you'll see that in August, and then a little laudanum bottle.
Little laudanum bottle. We'll have this out later this year.
So then by November, I mentioned already, you're going to see some great kind of speaking presentations. Those are going to be at Carnton, 7 o'clock on Thursdays, November the 7th, 14th, and 21st. I know I mentioned the first two, but the last one will be Walter Green talking about Franklin during occupation in 1864, which I think will be a really kind of an interesting one, because when we get to 1864 and we're talking about Franklin, our immediate instinct is just to jump straight into the battle, jump right into Hood and Schofield. But there's federal troops in the area. This is a town that's been under occupation for the better part of a year. There's federal installation there in Fort Granger. So we're going to get to hear about a little bit of all of that. And then comes the 29th. So we'll have Rippavilla battlefield tours at 9, 11, and 2 on the 29th. The house will be open in the evening. I think you're going to say some things. I think I'm going to say some things. I think we're going to have a couple other people come in for some comments, little opening kind of remarks, and then the house will be open for tours that night.
And this year, the Friday and Saturday, which are the 29th and the 30th, are right after Thanksgiving.
Yes. So
if your family's driving you crazy, just come out and see us to get out of the house.
Or bring them. That way there's more people.
Yeah, bring them and you can leave.
Yeah, do whatever you want to do.
Drop them off and
Taxi
go back
service,
home.
you can be their lift.
That's
it's fine.
right.
And then on the 30th, that's Saturday, 5 a.m. I'm taking this one straight out of your playbook. 5 a.m. Dawn Battlefield Tour. We're going to start at Carter House and make our way to Carnton. That's going to be an interesting one because I've never done that before. That'll be a fun battlefield tour to do. So if you're interested in that, $29 a person, you can RSVP on our tickets for that. And then we've got battlefield tours at 9, 11, and 2 on Saturday as well, up in Franklin at Carter House in Carnton. And then that evening, we've got some programming to be done. And then the houses are open for tours that night. And then finally, the week after, December the 6th and 7th, Pat Landrum, who's made it now into 2 episodes. Or has he been mentioned in this episode and the last one? I don't know. It's been a minute.
He's going to finally show up at the sites and actually come visit?
Yeah, he might have to.
I haven't seen him at the sites in years.
Those guys, the Independent Rifles, the Liberty Rifles, have put together this massive living history.
Is Landrum actually going to sleep outside?
He might have to, instead of his nice, warm, cozy bed.
Aww.
Oh, that's kind of sweet.
Hardcore, Pat.
Yeah. So those guys are going to be representing a pretty incredible, kind of 1-to-1 scale representation of the 3rd Mississippi. So Loring's Division out at Carnton. And then on the 7th, we're going to do a living history program inside the house. There's your big announcement.
Public service announcement from the CEO. I don't want anyone complaining about that Landrum's guys are not going to be there on the anniversary. We specifically chose this date because we felt that the anniversary and what happens in Franklin obviously extends beyond the 30th.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's going to be great for people to see them, to represent the 3rd Mississippi as a full unit, really outside of the shadow of it's the 160th, like the exact 4:00 on November 30th, 1864 to 2024. I think it will allow people to take their breath and kind of also think about what happened in a slightly different way. So it was intentional that we chose those dates.
And they're going to be representing them in the aftermath.
In the aftermath as well.
So that's that evening on the on the 7th from 5 until 8. We're going to have the house open, and you'll actually walk through a convalescent scene at Carnton. So John and Carrie McGavick didn't wake up on December the 1st and everybody was just gone.
Right.
In fact, that just was the beginning, I think.
And those guys, the survivors, buried their friends, and some of those who survived were badly wounded, had been carried to Carnton by their friends. Some of them ended up being buried at the Confederate cemetery. So it'll be great. And in all seriousness, the Landrum's guys, our Battle of Franklin Trust's only living history unit. Yep. They are top notch, and they're going all out for this. And I think people will be really surprised to see how the Confederates were actually supplied, because that's one of the old myths that we hope to, maybe twist on a little bit too, is that, everybody was barefoot in their clothes. These guys had gotten a bunch of new goods in the summer
new hats,
and
new shoes, new pants.
And the fall as they were moving across Alabama. They had some new duds, but that doesn't change what happened on November 30th and, of course, the aftermath.
Yeah. So that's a little taste of what we're going to be doing. And if you want more information, you can go to the website, boft.org, and go to the programs tab, and it'll be right there, little anniversaries of Spring Hill and Franklin.
Excellent.
There we go.
Last words? Super cool, super important?
Super cool, super important. I just hope to see a lot of people out for this event, because it's not just a day to remember the battle, but it's a day, I think, to remember what was at stake even that late in the war.
And we're not doing a reenactment.
Yeah.
And we probably won't. Our goal is to try and educate and teach people. It's not about entertainment. There's a place for that. But we'll be doing a lot of work over really the next 6 months to remember what happened throughout 1864 and how, for us, it culminates on November 29th and 30th, 1864, and then
extends a little bit
and spills into the days afterwards. Because look at Carnton. Yeah. There were still wounded men there, close to 50 of them until almost Christmas. So it didn't end on December 1st or the 2nd or the 3rd.
There we go.
All right. Thanks, everybody.